A 12-year-old black boy in duct tape shoes walked into the richest bank in Chicago. The millionaire banker laughed and called him trash in front of everyone. But when that screen showed $47 million, everything changed because his mother, the woman who cleaned that very bank, had been planning something for 10 years. Something that would break a cruel man's heart and put it back together. Stay until the end. This one will make you cry. I promise. Welcome to Radiant Story and Tales. While you are here, I want you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share to your loved ones. This will help us bring more interesting stories. Let me tell you about a moment that changed everything. A moment when a 12-year-old boy walked through doors he was never supposed to enter, into a world that had been built to keep people like him out. His name was Terrell Washington. And on this particular morning in downtown Chicago, he stood outside the towering glass building of Sterling and Hayes Private Banking, gathering every ounce of courage he had left. Now, you need to understand something. Terrell wasn't supposed to be there. Not in that part of the city, not in front of that building, and definitely not about to walk into one of the most exclusive banks in America. This was a place where millionaires kept their money, where men in $1,000 suits made deals that could change the course of entire companies. And Terrell? Well, Terrell was a black kid from the South Side. His sneakers were falling apart, held together with duct tape, because that was all he had. His clothes were clean, he'd made sure of that. But they were worn thin, patched in places, the kind of clothes that told a story of too many days and not enough money. There was dirt on his face that he couldn't wash off because the water had been shut off in his building for 3 days. He'd spent 3 hours working up the courage to push through those doors. 3 hours standing on that sidewalk, watching important people come and go, knowing that the moment he stepped inside, every eye would be on him, judging him, dismissing him. But he had to do it, because back home his little sister Jasmine was asking if they'd have dinner tonight, and he didn't have an answer, because Mrs. Thompson from a corner store had told him she couldn't give them any more food on credit, because the eviction notice on their door gave them 5 days to come up with rent they didn't have. So Terrell took a deep breath, clutched the envelope in his pocket, the one with the bank card that had arrived 6 months ago, and walked through those doors. The cold air hit him first, air conditioning so strong it felt like stepping into winter. And then there was everything else. Marble floors so shiny he could see his reflection. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than his entire neighborhood. Leather chairs that looked like nobody had ever actually sat in them. The smell of money, of success, of a world he'd only ever seen from the outside. A woman at the front desk looked up. Her expression changed the moment she saw him, from professional smile to barely concealed disgust. Terrell knew that look. He'd been seeing it his whole life. "Can I help you?" she asked, in a tone that really meant, "You shouldn't be here." "I need to check my balance," Terrell said. His voice came out as a whisper. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I have an account here." The woman's eyebrows rose. "Young man, this is a private banking institution. Perhaps you're looking for the regular bank down the street." "I have a card," Terrell interrupted, hating how desperate he sounded. His hand shook as he pulled out the envelope, extracted the black card with the Sterling and Hayes logo. The receptionist stared at the card, confusion replacing contempt. It was real. It was from this bank. But nothing made sense. How could this kid, who looked like he'd been sleeping under a bridge, have an account here? "I see," she said slowly. "You'll need to speak with one of our account managers. If you'll just wait." But Terrell never heard the rest, because at that moment, a voice boomed across the lobby, a voice full of authority and dripping with cruelty. "Stephanie, why are we allowing street kids into the building? Don't we have security for this kind of thing?" The man speaking was Robert Sterling. Everyone in Chicago knew Robert Sterling. His face was on billboards, in magazines, on the news. At 50 years old, he was one of the most powerful bankers in the country. His suit probably cost more than Terrell's mama used to make in a year. His watch could have fed every kid in Terrell's building for months. And he was staring at Terrell like he was garbage that had blown in from the street. Now, I want you to really picture this moment, because this is where everything could have ended. where Terrell could have turned around, walked out, and never come back. Robert Sterling walked across that marble floor like he owned it. And technically he did. He owned the bank, owned the building, owned the respect of every powerful person in Chicago. He'd never known what it was like to be dismissed, to be invisible, to be treated like you didn't matter. Look at him, Robert said loudly, making sure everyone in the lobby could hear. He's got dirt on his face. His clothes look like they came from a dumpster. The only account he's familiar with is probably whatever liquor store his parents frequent. Laughter rippled through the lobby. A woman in pearls covered her mouth, her eyes sparkling with mean delight. A man in an expensive suit shook his head, muttering about the neighborhood going downhill. Every word was a punch to Terrell's chest. Every laugh was a reminder that he didn't belong, that he would never belong, that no matter what that card in his hand said, he was still just a poor black kid from the South Side, and nothing would ever change that. He wanted to run. God, how he wanted to run. But then he thought about his mama, his beautiful, tired mama who'd worked herself to death, who'd cleaned toilets in buildings just like this one so her babies could eat, who'd gone to bed hungry so Terrell and Jasmine wouldn't have to. And Terrell found his voice. "I have a card," he said again, louder this time. His voice shook, but he forced his feet to move forward, to walk across that perfect floor toward Robert Sterling's desk. "I just want to check my balance." Robert's expression shifted from amused to irritated. This dirty kid was supposed to run away crying. Instead, he was walking toward him, actually daring to approach. "Security," Robert called out, but then something changed in his face. A new expression, not curiosity exactly, more like a cat that had found a mouse to play with. "Actually, wait," Robert said, holding up his hand to the approaching guards. A slow smile spread across his face. "This could be entertaining. Come here, boy. Let's see this account of yours." Terrell's legs felt like they might give out, but he kept walking. Every eye in that lobby was on him, judging, mocking, waiting to see him fail. When he reached the desk, he had to look up to meet Robert's eyes. The banker was still smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile of someone about to enjoy themselves at someone else's expense. "Let me guess," Robert said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "You found this card in the trash. Or maybe you stole it from someone's mailbox. That's a federal crime, you know." "I didn't steal it," Terrell whispered. "It came to my apartment. My name is on it." "Your name is on it," Robert repeated mockingly. "And what name might that be?" "Terrell Washington," he said quietly. Robert's fingers flew across his keyboard with exaggerated patience, like a parent humoring a child's ridiculous story. "Terrell Washington. Well, let's see what we find, shall we?" The typing seemed to go on forever. Terrell could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Around the lobby, wealthy clients had stopped even pretending to mind their own business. They were all watching, waiting to see this poor kid get exposed as a thief or a liar. Then Robert's finger stopped. His eyes locked onto the screen. And for just a fraction of a second, his confident smile flickered. It was barely noticeable. Just a slight widening of the eyes. A tiny tightening around the mouth. But Terrell saw it. Well, Robert said, his voice losing some of its mocking certainty. "It appears you do have an account, Terrell Washington." He paused dramatically. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have a genuine client among us. The account shows a balance of..." Robert stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went back to the screen. The smile froze on his face, taking on a strained quality. Terrell watched as the banker's face went through rapid changes. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and then something else. Something that looked almost like fear. "That's impossible," Robert whispered, so quietly only Terrell could hear. "That's absolutely impossible." You see, Robert Sterling had seen a lot in his 25 years of banking. He'd watched tech kids become billionaires overnight. He'd seen old money crumble and new fortunes rise. He'd witnessed the kind of wealth most people can't even imagine. But he had never, not once in his entire career, seen anything like what was on his screen right now. This 12-year-old boy, this child who looked like he hadn't had a decent meal in weeks, who was wearing shoes held together with tape, whose face was dirty because he didn't have running water. This boy had $47 million in his account. $47 million. There must be a technical error, Robert said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. Stephanie, can you verify something on your terminal? The receptionist hurried over. Robert watched her face as she pulled up the account, watched as all the color drained from her cheeks. Sir, she whispered, the balance shows $47.3 million. Last deposit 6 months ago. No withdrawals since the account was opened. But before Robert could process this, another voice cut through the tension. I'll take it from here, Robert. David Monroe, the bank's senior account manager, was walking across the lobby. At 65, David had been with Sterling and Hayes for over 30 years. Unlike Robert, he'd grown up poor in Atlanta, worked his way through college washing dishes, knew what it meant to have nothing. David, I'm handling this, Robert protested. No, Robert, you're making a scene, David said calmly. He turned to Terrell with kind eyes, the first kind eyes the boy had seen since entering the building. Hello, son. I'm David Monroe. Why don't you come with me? We can talk somewhere more comfortable. Upstairs, in a quiet conference room, David did something simple but profound. He ordered food, lots of food, sandwiches, fruit, cookies, and he watched as Terrell ate like he was starving. Because he was. Better? David asked gently. Terrell nodded, embarrassed. Good. Now, let's talk about your account. I've pulled up the file, and I have to say, your mother was an extraordinary woman. At the mention of his mother, Terrell's eyes filled with tears. Can you tell me where the money came from? Terrell asked. We never had money. We were always broke. Mama worked all the time, but we could barely pay rent. David pulled out a worn piece of paper, a letter. May I read this to you? Terrell nodded, recognizing his mother's handwriting. David cleared his throat and began. My dearest Terrell, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry I couldn't stay longer. But I need you to know, I'm not sorry for the life I lived. People will look at what I did, working multiple jobs, being tired all the time, and they'll think I failed. But baby, I was exactly who I needed to be. I was your mother and Jasmine's mother. That was the most important job I ever had. David's voice cracked as he continued. This money is from a life insurance policy I paid into for 10 years. Every month, even when we didn't have enough for food, I made that payment. Because I knew someday I wouldn't be there, and I needed to know you'd be okay. The money is yours, but it's protected in a trust. You'll get a monthly allowance for everything you need, housing, food, education. The full amount comes to you when you turn 25. Terrell was crying openly now. But Terrell, listen to me. David read, money doesn't make you better than anyone else. The world will treat you differently now. Remember that the people who treat you well, because you're rich, are the same ones who would have treated you badly if you were poor. Be kind to people who work hard jobs. Remember that I was one of those people. Money is just money. It's what you do with it that matters. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Forever your mother, Grace Washington. The room was silent, except for Terrell's quiet sobs. Your mother, David said softly, paid into that insurance policy for 10 years. $20, $30 a month that she somehow found even when you were going hungry. She never missed a single payment. Not once. She even made a payment when she was hospitalized with pneumonia 4 years ago. Why didn't she tell me? Terrell whispered. Because she didn't want you to know she was dying. She wanted you to remember her as strong, as someone who could take care of you, even after she was gone. Robert Sterling wasn't accustomed to being wrong. In his carefully constructed world, he was always in control, always 3 steps ahead, always the smartest person in the room. But when David called him upstairs to the conference room, Robert felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, genuine uncertainty. When he entered, he found Terrell eating a sandwich with the desperate hunger of someone who'd missed too many meals. And spread on the table were documents. Lots of documents. Sit down, Robert, David said quietly. Robert sat, feeling oddly like he was the one being evaluated. I've reviewed all the documentation, David began. Everything is completely legitimate. The money comes from a life insurance policy that Terrell's mother, Grace Washington, paid into for 10 years. She worked as a cleaning woman, sometimes 3 or 4 jobs at once. Every spare dollar went to her children or to this insurance policy. David slid a folder across the table. Robert opened it, and with each page, he felt his certainty crumbling. This wasn't a criminal enterprise. This was a mother who'd loved her children so much that she'd sacrificed everything, literally everything, to ensure they'd be taken care of. Grace Washington cleaned offices in the city, David continued, including this building. Actually, she probably cleaned this very room dozens of times. Something cold settled in Robert's stomach. All those nights he'd worked late, leaving messes for the cleaning crew. Coffee cups on desks. Papers scattered carelessly. Had Terrell's mother been one of the invisible people who'd cleaned up after him? Terrell had stopped eating. His hands were clenched in his lap, tears streaming down his face. She worked 60, 70 hours a week, David said. Never missed a payment. Even when she was hospitalized, she made her payment on time. Robert looked at this child he'd mocked and humiliated, and felt something he'd successfully avoided for most of his adult life. Genuine shame. "I'm sorry," Robert heard himself say. The words felt foreign. "Terrell, I'm truly sorry for how I treated you." Terrell looked up at him. "Are you sorry because you were wrong about the money? Or are you sorry because you were mean to a kid who didn't deserve it?" The question cut straight to the heart of everything. Robert wanted to say he was sorry for the right reasons, but the honest answer was more complicated. "Both," Robert admitted. "I'm sorry for both reasons. And I know that's not good enough, but it's the truth." What happened next changed everything. Robert insisted on going with Terrell to collect his sister and their belongings. He drove them to the south side in his luxury car, which looked absurdly out of place on those streets. The building where Terrell lived was falling apart. Broken windows, graffiti, trash piled on the sidewalk. Robert had to climb 4 flights of stairs because the elevator hadn't worked in 2 years. The apartment was tiny, maybe 400 square feet, but it was clean, meticulously clean, and decorated with obvious love. Children's drawings covered the walls. A small bookshelf held worn paperbacks arranged by color. A vase of plastic flowers sat positioned to catch the afternoon light. When they walked in, a little girl burst from one of the bedrooms. Jasmine, 8 years old, small for her age, with the same beautiful eyes as her brother. "Terrell," she cried, throwing herself at him. "I was so scared you weren't coming back." As Robert watched Terrell comfort his sister, explain about their mother's gift, he saw their neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez cry tears of joy. He saw how this community, these people who had nothing, took care of each other. And then Jasmine asked a question that broke Robert's heart completely. "Does this mean we don't have to be hungry anymore?" These children, these babies, had been living with hunger as a constant companion. While Robert had been spending hundreds on business lunches he barely touched, these kids had been wondering if they'd eat dinner. "No, baby," Terrell said, pulling Jasmine close. "We never have to be hungry again." Everything they owned fit into 4 garbage bags and 1 small suitcase. As they carried it down, neighbors came out to say goodbye. There was no jealousy, only genuine happiness. These people understood struggle, and they were celebrating this rare victory. As they drove away, Robert made a promise to himself. He would help these children. But more than that, he would let them help him remember what really mattered. 3 months passed. 3 months that changed everything. The morning after taking Terrell and Jasmine to their new home, Robert arrived at the bank at 5 a.m. He walked through every floor, really looking for the first time. He noticed the cleaning crew working silently, emptying trash cans, vacuuming carpets. He introduced himself to them, learned their names, asked about their lives, their families, their challenges. And when they opened up about impossible expectations, poverty, wages, lack of respect, Robert listened with the attention he usually reserved for billionaire clients. By Monday, he called an emergency board meeting. He proposed tripling wages for cleaning and maintenance staff, health insurance, paid vacation, retirement benefits, scholarships for their children, "Have you lost your mind?" one board member shouted. "These costs will destroy our profit margins." "Good," Robert replied calmly. "Our profit margins are obscene. We can afford to treat people like human beings." The vote was close, but Robert won. 2 board members resigned in protest. Robert thanked them and didn't hide his relief. The changes didn't stop there. Robert started actually listening to employees. He fired managers who created toxic environments. He implemented transparent promotion criteria. He started treating everyone with dignity. The financial press was brutal. "Sterling goes soft," one headline read. His peers called, concerned. Was he having a breakdown? Robert told them all the same thing. "I met someone who taught me what real wealth looks like, and it wasn't in a bank account." Meanwhile, Terrell and Jasmine were thriving. Jasmine was getting straight A's, making friends, finally getting to be 8 years old. Terrell, though still grieving his mother, had found peace. One afternoon, Terrell came to Robert's office with a proposal. "I want to start a foundation," he said. "The Grace Washington Foundation for Working Families. I want to help kids like me and Jasmine, kids whose parents are working themselves to death but still can't make ends meet." "That's beautiful, Terrell," Robert said, his throat tight. "I want to donate $10 million from my trust to start it," Terrell continued. "But I also want to help people see those kids. Really see them, the way you didn't see me at first." The word stung, but Robert didn't flinch. "You're absolutely right. What did you have in mind?" As Terrell explained his vision, school supplies, tutoring, food assistance, job training, Robert felt his heart swell with pride. This child understood something profound. "I'd be honored to help," Robert said. "On one condition. Let me match your $10 million with $10 million of my own." Terrell's eyes widened. "Why would you do that?" "Because 3 months ago I was miserable," Robert said. "I measured success by money and power. I was rich and absolutely empty. Your mother's letter, the way she loved you and Jasmine, showed me what I'd been missing." He walked to the window, looking out at the city. "I've spent these months trying to be better, treating people with dignity, actually caring. And you know what? I'm happier than I've been in 20 years. I sleep better. I actually enjoy my life. I even reconnected with my daughter, who hadn't spoken to me in years." Jasmine, who'd been reading quietly in the corner, looked up. "I'm proud of you, Mrs. Sterling." Those simple words, delivered with such conviction, nearly undid Robert completely. "Thank you, Jasmine," he managed. "That means more than you know." Later that week, Robert did a television interview about the changes at Sterling and Hayes. When asked what inspired him, he told the truth. "I met a 12-year-old boy who showed me that I've been measuring success with the wrong metrics," Robert said. "I humiliated him because he looked poor. Then I learned his mother had worked herself to death to give her children a future. While I was judging his boy based on his appearance, his mother was building something more impressive than anything I'd ever accomplished." Terrell, sitting beside him, spoke about his mother with pride and grief. "The money is wonderful," he said, "but the real gift Mama gave us was showing us how to be good people, how to never treat anyone as less than human." When critics said Robert had gone soft, that he was sacrificing profits for politics, he just smiled. "Our profitability has actually increased," he explained. "Turns out when you treat people well, they work harder and care more." Who knew? But then he got serious. "More importantly, I don't care what critics say. I spent 45 years caring what wealthy men thought of me, and it made me miserable. Now I care about whether I can look in the mirror and feel proud. And for the first time in decades, I can." As the months went by, the Grace Washington Foundation grew. They helped hundreds of families. Terrell and Jasmine thrived. And Robert Sterling became the kind of man he should have been all along. One evening, sitting in his office as the sun set over Chicago, Robert thought about Grace Washington, a woman he'd never met, but who'd changed his life completely. A woman who cleaned toilets and worked herself to exhaustion, who society had dismissed as insignificant. That woman had been worth more than 1,000 men like him, because Grace Washington understood something that Robert had forgotten. True wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you touch, the kindness you show, and the dignity you extend to every human being. It all started with a scared boy asking to check his balance. A number on a screen, $47 million. That had frozen a smile. But it was what came after, the lesson learned from a boy and his sister and their mother's love, that had thawed a frozen heart. And that transformation, that was worth more than any amount of money could ever be.